Let's welcome to the program a great friend of America's Forum, former CIA analyst Fred Fleitz, who joins us from Washington, D.C. Fred, we issue the caveats that this is very much of a developing story. But as you hear this, that perhaps action has been taken against the Kawauchi brothers, who we believe were holding a hostage, holed up there in that print shop in that industrial park in close proximity of the Charles de Gaulle Airport. What are your impressions of these media accounts?
Well, as you said, JD, it's a fluid situation. It looks like French officials decided they were not going to let the situation go on much longer. They didn't want to go on into the night. Maybe they feared that the hostages would be killed or something else would happen. But I mean, a decision was obviously made. They were going to end this situation.
And one wonders tactically, Fred, that wouldn't nightfall conceivably aid military or quasi-military or law enforcement officials who might take the action? Night vision goggles, the sophistication that I believe the French would have access to since they're closely allied with us and the prevailing technologies. Would there have been an argument to allow it to move on into nightfall?
It could be. The French are very good at counterterrorism. Now, there have been reports that they were jamming cell phone signals to stop the terrorists from communicating with their associates who may have been outside of the building, or maybe sending messages to Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State or whatever. I think French officials know what they're doing. It could be the cover of darkness. Could be they were listening into what was going on inside the building, and they found some indications that maybe the hostages were about to be executed.
And now we are hearing, Fred, we are trying to get confirmation, but reports of gunfire in both locations. Now, based on the limited information we have, the hostage taker in the kosher supermarket in eastern Paris was saying that he would start executing the hostages were the Kawauchi brothers not released from that print shop where the cops had them cornered. Granted, we don't know yet. We hate to engage in speculation, but based on this limited information, does this suggest coordination, or at the very least conceivably that the terrorists in both locations are listening to media accounts of what is transpiring?
I think there's probably a concern that the terrorist in one or both locations is listening to media accounts. It could also be that somehow French police determined that there was a deadline, and after that deadline, the hostages would be killed. And it could be that's why the government moved so quickly.
There are a myriad of possibilities and scenarios that, quite frankly, we do not know at this point. And so given our limited information, I suppose we're really asked to step back and try to gain some perspective. And this, just as, Fred, we have a debate in our society about liberty versus security, there is also the public's right to know as opposed to operational security necessary in these kinds of situations. We're here trying to root out the story. In retrospect, would it have been better for the French to proffer a complete news blackout of these developments if they were preparing to strike?
Well, I don't know how much information the French police issued, and how do you stop a free press from reporting on an incident like this? There's international media in the country. There's only so much the French government can do to clamp down on them. And France believes in the freedom of the press. So, they may not be issuing details, but reporters may see what's going on, talk to the sources, and information gets out.
Well, in terms of operational security, the press has been kept some distance from both venues, but we have the sights and sounds just a matter of minutes ago from the print shop in that industrial complex close to the Charles de Gaulle Airport. Let's look and listen to that. That is the situation. The press kept well away, but no suppression. You could hear the report of gunfire. You could hear the shots being fired. Fred Fleitz, we put you in a challenging position, I understand, as we're listening to this. But given your experience analyzing situations militarily and in terms of these terror attacks, anything we can draw, anything that you hear in that gunfire and apparently the multiple shots, what does that suggest?
Well, it suggests to me that the police are moving in on these locations, and the terrorists may be returning fire. Beyond that, it's just impossible for me to say.
There is also some concern, and this speaks to the involvement of Al-Qaeda, and specifically Al-Qaeda in Yemen, in training one of the Kawachi brothers. There has been, and I'm interested in the broad notion that you may have about exactly what kind of training these would-be jihadists might receive from Al-Qaeda in Yemen, but specifically use of explosives, of booby traps, of bombs, perhaps, as we've seen in different locations in the Middle East, people becoming homicide bombers. Do you believe that it is conceivable the Kawachi brothers may have had the ability to set their own explosives in place, their own booby traps, to try and prevent law enforcement from coming into that print shop?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because if they are affiliated with Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which until the rise of ISIS was the most aggressive and most dangerous Al-Qaeda franchise, this is the group that has one of the best bomb makers in the Al-Qaeda organization. I might add that bomb maker may now be working for ISIS. Both groups are very good at making weapons, and I think we have to worry that since these assailants were, this was not homegrown terrorism. These were well-trained assailants using military-grade weapons. We have to assume they have more military-grade weapons, and they probably have explosives. They could be wired to blow themselves up.
Earlier today, as these events were
Iraq or Syria, but I don't think these guys did this on their own.
And of course, it prompts the obvious question. Now, with really arguably 3 different events in France, when you have the shooting of the policewoman yesterday, sandwiched between the Charlie Hebdo and today's hostage taking in the kosher market there in eastern Paris, while what should we be looking for here in the United States?
Well, let me add, JD, that this is the culmination of over a month of terrorist attacks in France. There were 3 incidents where jihadists yelling Abu Akhtar tried to run down Frenchmen over the Christmas holidays. There were 2 or 3 other incidents where policemen were attacked by jihadists who
Fred, let me interrupt you right there. We will bring you back. Let's get